What is YouTube? Maybe we shouldn't have used the echo on this one right here, but check this out. Films show how Trump tore immigrants, families apart. Let me read it again. The film shows how Trump tore immigrant families apart as 1,300 kids still alone. Wow. I think this is not the point. If they are here illegally, they got to go. We should be sending the whole family, or let them make up their mind. But we'll talk about that out after all this. Y'all hit that subscribe button, hit that bell. Let's check this bad boy out. Here we go.
By viewers like you. Please support our work at democracynow.org/give. Homework number one, bourgeoisie by 𝗟𝗓𝗡𝗏. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. We end today's show with the acclaimed new documentary, Separated, which looks at the horrors of the Trump administration's zero-tolerance policy that led to the separation of up to 5,500 children from their parents, mostly from Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, as they sought asylum at the U.S.-Mexico border. The disturbing policy was enforced as early as July 2017, months before Trump officials even acknowledged it was happening. To this day, over 1,000 children are still separated from their families, many remaining in the U.S. after their parents were deported to their home countries. This is the trailer of Separated.
Separation from your parent is a profoundly traumatizing event. But systematic separation of children from parents, officially, it wasn't happening. But it was happening.
Wow.
You should tell me how you got involved in all of this.
Define all this.
Their version of stopping people from coming into the country was taking children away from their parents so that people wouldn't come.
Our field staff started to notice very young kids, tender age, anyone below 5. That's kind of unusual, right?
What zero tolerance did was turn their helpers into their worst nightmare.
So if you thought the child was endangered, that's the only circumstance to which you would separate.
Can't imagine doing it otherwise.
The government thought that showing the world separations through the eyes of people like me, they would scare the out of people that were attempting to come from coming. Is that the right strategy?
So if you're part of a family and you break the law, you will be incarcerated.
I've honestly never seen anything like that. There are about 1,500 kids in there.
You're a parent. Don't you have any empathy for what they go through?
We now know this was right from the get-go. Someone must have been planning this.
A federal judge says the government needs to reunite young immigrant children with their parents.
We had 14 days to reunify all of the children under 5.
Their assessment form in the system doesn't have that much information. What's your mom's name? Mom? Like every mom, their name is Mom.
Do I call this child abuse? Do I call it torture?
Separation was the purpose. Prosecution was the tool.
It's not over. 5 years later, we are still trying to reunite up to 1,000 children.
There is really nothing to stop them.
This is a new era.
It troubles me profoundly that it could happen again.
For more, we're joined by 2 guests.
I can see their side of this, and I can see other people's side of it also. And I'm going to keep my comments to the end when we really discuss it. So let's keep going on. I had to stop it and say something.
Yeah.
Oscar-winning filmmaker Errol Morris, director of this new film, Separated, many other documentaries. He did The Thin Blue Line, The Fog of War, The Unknown Known, many more. He joins us from Cambridge, Massachusetts. And here in New York, we're joined by 𝗟𝗓𝗡𝗞𝗦, NBC News political and national correspondent, whose 2020 book, Separated, Inside an American Tragedy, inspired Morris's documentary. Separated begins a week-long Academy Award qualifying run at the IFC Center here in New York tonight, before it's released in theaters and broadcast on MSNBC this December. We're joined both by Errol Morris in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and 𝗟𝗓𝗡𝗞𝗦. Jacob, your book was astounding, your work and what's being shown in Errol Morris's film. Talk about what happened on the border and actually the trajectory that led to that. It didn't start with Trump, though, to say the least. He exacerbated the situation.
Yeah, it certainly didn't. First of all, thank you so much, Amy, for having me back. And it's an honor, as always, to be here. And it's been a profound honor to work with Errol on this project. And I think that, when you talk about, remind folks about what happened, don't take my word for it. Listen to the George W. Bush Republican-appointed judge in the Southern District of California who stopped this policy and called it one of the most shameful chapters in the history of our country, the deliberate separation of, as you said, over 5,500 children from their parents for no other reason than to harm those children, to scare other families, largely from Central America, from coming to the United States. And I guess what you'll see in the film, what Errol has done so beautifully, is lay out how the Trump, first of all, American immigration policy over the course of decades led us to this moment. It was a bipartisan immigration policy from Democrats and Republicans that was based in deterrence and based in hurting people as the official policy of the United States to make sure other people didn't come. We know it doesn't work. It still doesn't work. It didn't work under Bill Clinton or George W. Bush or Barack Obama, who deported more people than any other president in the history of the United States. It certainly didn't work under Donald Trump, who deliberately separated all these children, and under President Biden now, a turn back to deterrence-based policies. And what the film does is put it all in context in the way that only Errol Morris can. And I can't wait for everybody to see it.
I want to turn to a clip of Jonathan White, the former deputy director of the Office of Refugee Resettlement, in the film Separated.
If you have children, you need only imagine your own child in a foreign country, not speaking the language, with no parent, with no money, not understanding how that society works, having been apprehended by federal immigration authorities. Each of these children is your child in that situation. I can never explain to someone why they should care, but I can tell you that a lot of people do care, and care profoundly.
Yes, we care.
Every day there are children who enter the United States unaccompanied by a parent or legal guardian. And those children require protection and care to find a family member of theirs in the United States who can take care of them. Family separation, though, was not about unaccompanied children. It was about accompanied children. It's about children with their families. And the unaccompanied children program, which I worked in, was essentially hijacked for a purpose for which it was never intended, nor authorized in law. It was a program designed to be a child protection program for children who entered the United States without parents. And it was instead used as a tool to take children from their parents.
That's Jonathan White, former deputy director of the Office of Refugee Resettlement, in the film Separated. He was a commander and now a captain. Errol Morris, if you can talk about those who agreed to be part of your documentary, those who thought they were going to be in it, but then decided to leave once they got to the interview site. Talk about the film that you made.
A difficult film to make because few people wanted to talk and few people could talk. People who were still working for the government were constrained by that fact alone from actually appearing in the film. But it's a sad and disheartening story. We all know immigration has become a political hot potato. It's also become a hotbed of lies. If you want to hear really extraordinary lying, listen to people on both sides talking about immigration. Although the Republicans certainly have the lead in lying, self-deception, misrepresentation. It's endless.
Wow, I like that. I think that's true. I think that letting so many people over our border, I think that's true for the last, what, 4 years or something? That's crazy. Here we go.
And this is a disheartening story, particularly for someone like myself, whose parents and grandparents were immigrants who came to this country. Is this how we want to treat people? No one wants to disagree and say that there isn't a problem with immigration. That would be foolish, because there is. But still, it comes down to how we treat people coming into this country, or people who want to come into this country. And it's an embarrassment.
Let's listen to how we treat people. In 2018, ProPublica released audio from inside a U.S. Customs and Border Protection facility in which kids between the ages of 4 and 10 are heard crying, "Mama, Papa," after being separated from their parents at the southern border.
Yeah, that's sad, but
well, we have an orchestra here, right? What we're missing is a conductor.
We have the crying orchestra right here. What we're missing is the conductor, the Border Patrol agent, mocking them, 𝗟𝗓𝗡𝗞𝗦, this significant moment that riveted the country, and the abhorrent, the feeling of people across the political spectrum of these children being separated. Talk about who would and wouldn't be interviewed.
Yeah, and I remember that moment too, because I was down on the border. It was Ginger Thompson at ProPublica that published that audio, and you'll hear it again in the film, put into the context of these beautiful narrative vignettes that Errol's created with Eugenio Caballero, the Oscar-winning production designer, and these wonderful cast of Mexican actors and the Mexican crew that basically recreated what nobody got to see. What the point you made, Amy, here by showing this, actually, I think, is that nobody really got. I was inside those facilities, but nobody, and saw with my own eyes. But there's no footage inside those facilities. There's leaked audio from those facilities, and I think it's part of the reason, to get your question, why some of the officials who were part of this policy, like Tom Homan, the former director of ICE and potentially the future director of the Department of Homeland Security under former President Trump. And Errol, tells the story better than I do, but showed up at the studio in Cambridge to be interviewed by Errol, only to leave before sitting down in front of Errol and the Interrotron. But on the other hand, there were people like Jonathan White, like Jalen Suolog, career civil servants who spent their lives warning about this and tried to protect these children that did show up.
Head of Homeland Security, Kristen Nielsen.
Yeah, she didn't show up either. Errol,
you spoke to her for many, many hours?
I spoke to her for many, many hours, but in the end, she refused actually to appear on film.
And talk about her significance, Jacob.
Well, she signs, and you'll see it in the movie, she signs the decision memo, option 3 on this line, despite receiving a pair of contradictory memos, one from John Mitnick, the general counsel of the Department of Homeland Security, that said you may very well violate, I'm paraphrasing here, the Constitution of the United States by deliberately separating these children. And nevertheless, at the urging of officials like Kevin McAleenan, who was the head of Customs and Border Protection, signed it to enact this policy and separate all these children.
So Homan addressed the RNC, and we were both on the floor of the RNC, and I saw you going over to Don Trump Jr., yes, Donald Trump's son, about the family separation policy. Let's play a clip.
I know immigration's important to him. I covered the family separation crisis closely. Will we continue to see policies like separating 5,000 children deliberately from their parents?
You mean the Obama administration?
You know they didn't do that, sir.
Okay, sure.
Will there be a second family separation policy?
It's MSDNC, so I expect nothing less from you clowns. Even today, even 48 hours later, you couldn't wait. You couldn't wait with your lies and with your nonsense. So just get out of here.
You notice him, he called him a clown. Why would you call somebody out of their name? That's not cool.
Because MSNBC, they like MSNBC has been so egregious that MSNBC might be no more. That's how egregious they've been with their rhetoric. I will say that. So grain of salt.
I was standing right behind you, and he stormed away as he was telling you to get out of here. Yeah. But the significance of what he's saying and who makes the decisions. Can this happen again? I mean, you have 1,000 kids now that still are separated.
Over 1,300, actually, according to the Department of Homeland Security. And you know, the thing about that exchange is you'll notice that he didn't address the question, actually. And not just him, but former President Trump, J.D. Vance, Donald Trump Jr., none of them will address whether or not they will reenact this policy, will put this policy back into place, which I think raises, and Tom Homan, by the way, himself at CPAC got up there and said, you know, I don't want to, and it's in the movie, I don't want to hear about family separations anymore. I'm still facing lawsuits about this. Nobody said we won't do it. And what do you think a mass deportation policy is? Deporting more people than, you know, Dwight D. Eisenhower in 1954. You know, that is family separation. There are families that are mixed status families, and that's the official policy of the Republican National Committee and the Trump campaign. And as I said, these are the Republican policies of the Trump administration, but it wouldn't have happened were it not for decades of bipartisan deterrence-based immigration policy that continues to this day.
And the role of Congress?
Well, Congress hasn't done anything to protect the children who have been separated and to ban family separation in perpetuity. It just hasn't happened.
Errol Morris, you wanted this film out before the election. Why?
Well, it's, I think, pretty damn obvious. I don't think it particularly looks good for Donald Trump. A number of administrations had considered the possibility of separating parents and children at the border and rejected it because it was clearly inhumane. Not Donald Trump. And one of the most appalling aspects of this policy is there were arguments about keeping records. Okay, let's separate the children, but let's not actually keep a record of how to ever reunite them. Let's separate them for good. Let's just create orphans, abandoned children. To me, it's the most appalling part of the policy. It's a policy, if one hasn't noticed this in all of Donald Trump's rhetoric, it's a policy of meanness.
Errol Morris, we're going to have to leave it there.
Deterrence, you can say it's this, you can say it's that, but at its heart, it's a policy of meanness.
So Separated is premiering tonight at IFC here in New York City, has a week-long run, and then it's going to be on MSNBC, but after the election?
It'll be on in December. We're going to get the theatrical release out of the way first, and I'm excited for people to see it whenever and wherever they can see it.
I want to thank you both for being with us. Jacob Soboroff is author of Separated and is one of the stars of the film Separated, directed by Errol Morris. Happy birthday to Becca Stelly. I'm Amy Goodman. Democracy Now! Is funded by viewers like you. Please give today at Democracy.
You know, it's difficult, man. I mean, think about it. If you came into this country illegally and you have kids, that means the kids are automatically U.S. citizens. I think that needs to change. And so since the kids are U.S. citizens, the people that are not U.S. citizens, which is the parents in this case, they got to go. So then the kids are, what the kids going to do? I can understand that. So I can understand both sides, you know. But what do y'all think? I feel as though the whole family should be deported. You want your kids, you got to go. Take your kids with you. You know, what do y'all think? Y'all put in the comments below. Look here, we are on our live channel and we're going to discuss this a whole lot deeper, baby. Y'all take it light, take it slow. Tell them Uncle Mike told you so. Peace out.